Hi, it's Mary Jane here with Home for the Harvest, and I've had some questions about feeding peonies. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about fertilizing peony plants and when to do it, what to do. I honestly wouldn't worry too much about feeding peonies. I think unless they're in like soilless mix in the shade, they'll probably be fine. I wrote an article. Heirloom Gardener asked me to write an article a few years ago, and it was about plants to rescue from construction sites and old homesteads and stuff. And I put peony on the list because these plants can get so old and live for so long without care. So if these things can live for 50 years where a house used to be, nobody's going out there and feeding it. So don't get too worked up, I don't think, about fertilizing peonies. I think if you miss it, they'll be fine. But that being said, here's what I do. Pretty much everything gets, peonies included, gets a mulch of compost first thing. So I'm doing that usually in March here in Zone 5. So at that point I can usually see the peonies kind of in a few places. Some of them I can't see, some of them I can, but I'm just giving the whole area a gentle, about an inch or two of homemade compost, and I just do that on my perennial beds. It keeps it looking fresh and it makes me feel better, like there's new nutrients going in there. So I like to do that. Peonies, though, if you do want to use a fertilizer on them, I like to use just rose food. So I'm using an organic, granular, slow release rose food. So this is the same that I use on my roses, on my David Austin roses. And this is a Pro Mix bloom boost, any kind of, or flower boost. Any kind of organic, slow release fertilizer that's lower in nitrogen is probably going to be a decent bet. So if you are going to use like a fertilizer product on your peonies, something that's organic, low in nitrogen, I like to apply it right now. The peonies are about a foot tall. A few of them are starting to get these little buds that will be future flowers. They're tiny. But yeah, they're about a foot tall. The leaves are kind of opening out. This is when I feed my peonies. But like I said, I'm not terribly worried about feeding them. If I miss it, they'll be fine. Yeah, so this is when I like to feed my peonies. I know that some people feed them earlier. Some people like to do fertilizer when they're 3 or 4 inches. I'm sure that that's fine. You're using a slow release fertilizer anyway. And you're not terribly worried about the nitrogen. So I like to use a low nitrogen fertilizer, and I like to use it right now, just as the buds are starting to form. So I'm really looking forward to seeing these beautiful blooms, hoping this little bit of added phosphorus will help them. The reason that you want a low nitrogen fertilizer is that you don't want peonies that are all leaves and no flowers. No one wants that. The foliage is beautiful, but it's all about the blooms. So this fertilizer and lots like them, just a rose food, you're just scattering it on the ground. Like, it's that easy. You can kind of work it in, mulch over it, water, that kind of stuff, but honestly you can sprinkle it on and it's usually fine. I just like organic fertilizers in general, and I've got an article on my blog, a really detailed article all about organic fertilizers, and some of the pros and cons, and why I've moved towards them, and I'll put the link to that article in my description. It's extremely long. I think it's like 5,000 words, so read it if you have time. If you're interested in organic fertilizer. But one reason that I really do prefer it is it's brown. So I can put it on the mulch. I can just like sprinkle it on here, and kind of, work it in a little bit with my gardening gloves, but I'm not seeing, weird colored dots. It just blends right in. It camouflages really well. So it's kind of a weird reason for using organic, and definitely is not one that I listed in that article that I mentioned. But yeah, I just sprinkle it in, work it in a little bit, and that's all I do. I regular watering. I don't feed them again. Some people like to feed them kind of at the end of summer so that they are able to focus on their roots, or they have more nutrients available for their roots. I don't do that. I'm not really too worried about it, but I'm sure it's fine. If you're really interested, you can get soil tests or other tests to see, nutrient tests, specific tests to see. But as long as your peonies look healthy, I'm sure they're fine. If your peonies aren't blooming, I wouldn't pick fertilizer as the first suspect. Make sure that they're getting lots of sun. If they're not getting 6 to 8 hours of sun, that's something to fix if you can. It's pretty hard to fix sun, but maybe you can do some creative pruning. So sunlight is definitely a suspect for lack of blooms, and so is it if its crown is buried too deep. So if the plant is buried too deep, that can affect blooming as well. So I would take care of those two issues first before I worry about fertilizer for flowers. If you're sure it's not planted too deep, if it's getting lots of sun, if it's been in the ground for a few years, it's nicely established, everything else should be going well, and it's still not blooming, definitely a soil test for sure. Peonies in general are easy. They really don't need to be fertilized much, if at all. And if they're not blooming, the first two suspects are lack of sun and buried too deep. So I have lots of videos like this on my channel, so please click the subscribe button. It should be somewhere down there, and that will subscribe you to my channel, which basically means that YouTube will suggest more videos like this to you, and I have lots more that I want to make. So thanks so much for watching, and happy peony season.